Okay, time is approximately 6:02 p.m., March 24th, 2022. Farragut Board and Mayor and Alderman meeting will now come to order. All Farragut Board and Mayor and Alderman meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law. Our meetings can be seen live on Charter Channel 193 and TDS Channel 3, as well as the Farragut YouTube channel and also our website. It will also be recorded. It can be viewed later on Town Farragut YouTube channel, as well as the Charter Channel 193 and TDS Channel 3. During the regular posted agenda, all comments or questions from Farragut residents will now be in person. If you're interested in speaking, we ask that you fill out a blue card with your name, address, and the agenda number, and turn it into the town recorder prior to the start of the meeting. The mayor or the vice mayor shall maintain and control the meeting to provide a professional and objective environment. So please read the posted comment protocol and understand there will be a 5-minute limit for each speaker. And please stay on topic, as at the end of tonight's business meeting, there will be some time reserved for other public comments under the Citizens Forum agenda, in which the same rules will apply as a regular posted agenda item. Okay, we'll do a meeting call to order. We'll start with a silent prayer and a pledge of allegiance to our country's flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Town Recorder, can you please do a roll call for a quorum, please?
I can. Alderman Burnett.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Here.
Alderman Povlin. Here. Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams here. Okay, on approval of agenda, are there any agenda amendments?
No, sir.
None, okay.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor of approvals, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show that the March 24th, 2022 agenda has been approved as stated. Okay, approval of minutes. Any amendments to the minutes?
No, sir.
None. Okay, with
Second.
all in favor of approval, say yes.
Yes.
Let the record show that the March 10th, 2021 minutes, 22 minutes, have been approved and will be recorded as official minutes of that meeting. Okay, Mayor's report. From time to time, we have folks that move into our town from far away places like Connecticut and California. And many times they'll attend our board and planning commission meetings, and they'll mention that we do not do things like they did back home. This is very common, as Farragut does do things a little bit different from Knox County or even the city of Knoxville. For anyone who has never served on a committee or a board in our town, after attending one meeting, to have an impression that we do not understand the proper role of government is just an unfounded opinion. The town has always been proactive to change, as you'll see when we amend the ordinances. We're very much aware of private property rights, but we have strict zoning for a reason. At that point, I will turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
All right, we have a few things. First, we want to congratulate Teresa Ferguson. She's with our engineering department. She has been recognized for her excellent customer service. We're trying to celebrate our employees a little bit more than we have in the past. They work very hard. I don't think that many people realize how leanly we staff, and a lot of our staff wears a lot of different hats, and they do it with grace. And we really appreciate the efforts of Teresa Ferguson, so thank you to Teresa Ferguson. And the next thing is Julie from the Chamber is here to give us our monthly update.
Good evening.
Name and address, chamber address is fine.
Thank you. I spend more time there anyway.
There you go.
Julie Blaylock, Farragut West Knox Chamber of Commerce, 11826 Kingston Pike, Suite 110, 37934. And I have a guest with me that I'll introduce to you in here in just a second. I'll be as brief as I can. So our update from February was very busy member-wise. We welcomed 14 new business members, 4 of which are offices are located in Farragut. So that was wonderful. It was a lighter month for programs and activity, mostly because Omicron was still making its rounds, and so we kind of let things that didn't happen lie because we thought that was for the best. But still had some really good programs and events. What I do want to highlight is some of the newness that we are welcoming, and one of the best things is we have finally hired a third staff member, which we've been without for almost 24 months. And so I brought Caitlin Smith here just to introduce her to you all. She is our new communications and digital coordinator. She's full-time. It's a new role for the office, and so she's taking over all of our social media, our digital communications, the e-newsletter, photography, graphic design, you name it. You can't imagine what we have in store for this young lady. But I wanted to introduce her to you all so you would know her face, because you're going to see her around a lot. Part of her job is going to be telling the story of our businesses and our area, of which she is particularly qualified. So we're looking forward to seeing how she grows and supporting her in that endeavor. Just a couple things to highlight. You've got some of the programs and events that are coming up into April to finish out the month. Of course, Steve already talked about the Pop-Up Expo, so I won't go over that, but we are just so excited. I have every confidence that we will reach the goal of vendors that Steve mentioned, and I would love to see it go higher. We are bringing back our in-person lunch and learns starting April 7th. It was an initiative we wanted to return in 2020, but we all know what happened there. So on the 7th, we're going to convene a limited space lunch and learn with a panel of members on cybersecurity right here at the community room. As you know, small businesses are particularly targeted for cybersecurity issues because they tend to have data that hackers want, and they don't tend to have the budget available in order to protect themselves properly. So this will be a free class for business members to just give them some ideas of things to look for and easy, low-cost ways to resolve some of the open doors that they might have. So please know that that's coming. The other thing that I'm excited about is on June the 14th, which is a little farther out, we are reconvening now with a total of 5 area chambers of commerce. So we did a regional networking last year that several of you all attended with 4 chambers. It was ourselves, Loudoun County, Oak Ridge, and Roane County. The purpose of that was to try to diversify the businesses and vendors that we get exposed to, make some new connections, and try to bridge some of those gaps. This year, we're welcoming Anderson County into the fold. So it'll be at the venue at Lenoir City just because it's the closest place to Farragut that will hold all 400 or 500 of us. So we would love to see you there. And with that, I'd love any questions if you have them.
What time is that event on June 14th?
4:30 to 6:30, I believe.
Have you guys scheduled your big event for your fundraising event?
The gala auction, September the 29th,
Thank you.
which is, I believe, the 5th Thursday in September.
Okay. That's good for us.
I try.
All right. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. I have one more thing, and I beg your patience, my fellow board members. The letter to the editor in today's Farragut Press contained misinformation that needs to be addressed. I hope to provide some clarity about and information about the town of Farragut. First, I'm going to read from an MTOS document, Dillon's Rule, Relationship of Municipalities to the State. To understand what a municipal charter is, you have to know what a municipality is. You may be surprised to learn that from a legal standpoint, a municipality almost anywhere in the United States, including Tennessee, is not much. Some writers have compared municipalities to children and state legislatures to their parents, but that comparison isn't completely accurate because most children have greater legal protection against their parents than municipalities do against their state legislatures. As quoted by Judge John F. Dillon and the Dillon Rule, municipal corporations owe their origin to and derive their powers from the legislature. It breathes into them the breath of life without which they cannot exist. It is a general and undisputed proposition of law that a municipal corporation possesses and can exercise the following powers and no others. First, those granted in express words. Second, those necessarily or fairly implied in or incident to the powers expressly granted. Third, those essential to the accomplishment of the declared objects and purposes of the corporation. The Town of Farragut was established and incorporated under the Mayor Aldermanic General Law Charter. Our charter is in state law, Title VI, Chapters 1 through 4. We share this charter with approximately 66 other municipalities, which were also incorporated under the Mayor Aldermanic General Law Charter. We derive our powers from Tennessee state law. We cannot do anything that we do not have statutory authority from the state of Tennessee to do. Title VI, Chapter 2, Section 201 outlines the general powers of the municipalities incorporated under the Mayor Aldermanic Charter, some of which are as follows. Define, prohibit, abate, suppress, prevent, and regulate all acts, practices, conduct, businesses, occupations, callings, trades, uses of property, and all other things whatsoever detrimental or liable to be detrimental to the health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, or welfare of the inhabitants of the municipality, and exercise general police powers. Prescribe limits within which business occupations and practices liable to be nuisances or detrimental to the health, morals, security, or general welfare of the people may lawfully be established, conducted, and maintained. Regulate the location, bulk, occupancy, area, lot, location, height, construction, and materials of all buildings and structures in accordance with general law, and inspect all buildings, lands, and places as to their condition for health, cleanliness, and safety, and when necessary, prevent their use and require any alteration or changes necessary to make them healthful, clean, or safe. Enforce any ordinance, rule, or regulation by fines, forfeitures, and penalties, and by other actions or proceedings in any court of competent jurisdiction. Provide by ordinance or court costs as provided in the Municipal Court Reform Act compiled in Title 16, Chapter 18, Part 3. Title 6, Chapter 54, Part 1 lists the general provisions of municipal powers. To better understand the general powers that our municipality has a right to exercise and how to exercise them in the state of Tennessee, we have to refer to other parts of the state of Tennessee Code. For instance, our grant of power for municipal zoning can be found in Title 13, Chapter 7, Section 201. For the purpose of promoting public health, safety, morals, convenience, order, prosperity, and general welfare, the Board of Aldermen, hereinafter designated as chief legislative body, is empowered in accordance with the conditions and the procedures specified in this part and Part 3 of this chapter to regulate the location, height, bulk, number of stories, and size of buildings and other structures, the percentage of lot which may be occupied, the sizes of yards, courts, and other open spaces, the density of population, and the uses of building structures, land for trade, industry, residence, recreation, public activities, and other purposes, and identify areas where there are inadequate or non-existent publicly or privately owned, maintained services and facilities when the Planning Commission has determined the services are necessary in order for development to occur. Title 13, Chapter 7, Part 203. Before enacting the zoning ordinance of any amendment thereof, the chief legislative body shall hold a public hearing thereon at least 15 days' notice of time and place of which shall be published in the official municipal journal or in a newspaper of general circulation in the municipality. We have statutory authority to establish a municipal planning commission via Title 13, Chapter 4, Section 101. The chief legislative body of any municipality may create and establish a municipal planning commission. Such planning commission shall consist of not less than 5 members and not more than 10 members, the number of members within the limits to be determined by the chief legislative body. One of the members shall be the mayor of the municipality or a person designated by the mayor, and one of the members shall be a member of the chief legislative body of the municipality selected by that body. All other members shall be appointed by the mayor. I am the appointed representative of the chief legislative body on the Planning Commission. The organization of the commission and rules are established in Title 13, Chapter 4, Section 102. Each municipal planning commission shall adopt rules for the transaction of business, which shall include but not limited to the selection of additional officers from among its members it deems appropriate to fill the organizational needs of the municipal planning commission, the requirements of the municipal planning commission to make findings of fact, statement of material evidence, and reasons for its actions as part of each motion or action of the municipal planning commission. Powers of the Planning Commission promote municipal planning is covered in Title 13, Chapter 4, 103. The Commission may make reports and recommendations related to the plan and development of the municipality to public officials and agencies, public utility companies, to civic, educational, professional, and other organizations, and to citizens. Earlier this week, I took the time to reach out to planners in the city of Alcoa and the city of Maryville. Both of them indicated that the vast majority of the proposed text amendments to zoning ordinance that they deal with are staff initiated. There is no formal application to do this. The staff recognizes a need for a text amendment, works through the language, and then it is taken to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation to the elected body. They do provide an application process for citizens and property owners to request zoning ordinance text amendments as well. That is how text amendments are handled in the town of Farragut. That's how it works with most municipalities in the state of Tennessee. Today, I took the time to call the town planner from the town of Woodbury, Connecticut, a very nice gentleman by the name of Will Agresta. Not surprisingly, they do things a little differently in the state of Connecticut. In the town of Woodbury, they have a separate planning commission and zoning commission. From my understanding, the zoning commission handles text amendments to the zoning ordinance and creation of new ordinances. Text amendments can be staff initiated, or local property owners and residents can apply for text amendments to be considered, much like the town of Farragut. Typically, any proposed text amendment to a zoning ordinance is required to go to the Planning Commission for review and report to make sure that the text amendments or zoning ordinance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It is my understanding that some municipalities in the state of Connecticut have a combined planning zoning commission as is permitted by the general statutes of the state of Connecticut. Not surprisingly, the town of Woodbury is subject to the Constitution and general statutes of the state of Connecticut. Likewise, the town of Farragut is subject to the Constitution of the state of Tennessee and the laws in the Tennessee Code. To insinuate that we in the town of Farragut are somehow doing something wrong because it's not how it's done in Connecticut is irresponsible. And that's all I had time to work on for that particular letter to the editor. And we'll try to address the other issues in a follow-up letter to the editor in next week's paper.
Okay, thank you. That's quite informative. To all, just a reminder on the inaugural Bluegrass on the Lawn happening this Saturday, March 26th from 3 to 6 p.m. at the Mayor Ralph McGill Plaza. The weather looks like it's going to be in the mid-50s, so it should be pretty good for all. Okay, next we have 4 ordinances that's on tonight's agenda for review and public hearing. They'll all 4 be on second reading. Okay, we'll start off with Ordinance 22-02, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code to create Appendix F, Public Tree Care Ordinance. Town of Farragut applicant.
Good evening. I'm Mark Shipley. I'll go over these next 4 ordinances for you. This ordinance basically creates a public tree care ordinance, establishes a tree board, and basically establishes one of the responsibilities of the tree board is to recognize Arbor Day. All those things you need to demonstrate in order to apply to be a Tree City USA town, and so this is just the next step in our process of sending in an application to the state. And then they will forward it to the Arbor Day Foundation to move forward from that point. So this ordinance was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission at their meeting in February and unanimously supported at first reading 2 weeks ago, and the staff recommends approval on second reading. There have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Do we have any resident questions?
Yeah, I do. I have one. I have Sean Murphy. The last one.
Sean Murphy, 716 Bridgeport. Can I ask a point of order of the mayor?
What do you need?
Okay. I've read in the rules for public speaking, rule number 8 of personal attacks and malicious comments shall not be tolerated. Do those rules apply to yourself and Alderman Povlin while we're at a public meeting as well as the people in the audience?
Please explain.
Okay. Sir, you just directed comments at someone from Connecticut, which I'm from. Ms. Povlin here called the land use office of a town I lived in 5 years ago and in my opinion, you folks just tried to dress me down. Ms. Povlin said that I had put some inaccuracies in a letter to the editor. I didn't really hear which. And I feel rather intimidated coming to talk in front of you after I've been dressed down by you, sir. And Ms. Povlin, you asked me my opinion, and I'm giving it to you.
Point of order is,
Ask for your opinion.
I mean, have you got something about the tree?
Yes, I do, but you asked me to clarify my statements, and now you're gaveling me down.
No, what I'm
and you
doing
didn't
is
answer my question.
You stay on point.
I just asked, do the rules apply to you folks as well as me?
About the trees?
No, about how you talk at a public meeting.
Well, that's not the point of order here.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to answer.
No,
Yes.
we'll answer, but it'll be when the time's come. Right now,
fine.
we're talking about this one particular ordinance, okay?
I understand. Sir, you asked me to clarify my question. I did.
Okay, about the tree ordinance.
No, you asked me when I asked for about a point of order. Listen, I'll move on to this, but you asked me a question. I answered it directly. You're telling me you'll address it later. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I am here today to speak against the proposed zoning changes. I'm speaking in general, and I talked to the nice lady over there, and she said the best thing to do was speak first. So these comments are directed for all 4 changes.
Let's stick with this one. You can, if you've got others to address, you can do so when the time comes.
They're all there. We have a number of issues in Farragut that have existed for decades. As a result, we have major traffic issues on Kingston Pike, the overcrowding in schools, the extended wait times for parents to drop off and pick up their kids at school, and even FUD's restrictions on when we can water our lawns. When I moved here, I came here with a clean slate and started to learn what really goes on in our town. I did not know any of you nor any of the local residents who have stood against many of your actions. I invested a lot of time and energy hearing both sides. I have served on a local zoning commission, and I have concerns with what's going on in the town.
Did that do with the tree ordinance?
Sir, may I finish my comments?
I told you to stay on point.
Sir, I am speaking about my concerns about what you're doing here. Can I finish?
No.
But you're not discussing the public tree ordinance.
When-
Are there concerns about
I
the
have,
public tree
yes, you have,
ordinance?
you have now not let me finish. I have the comments here. I was giving some background on why I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Best practices dictate growing areas have a firm plan that is voted into law. Farragut has a comprehensive land use plan, but it is only a set of guidelines. Once we in this place, it would be proper to consider the changes you have in front of you. I'm asking that we take a step back before we do all 4 of these changes and make sure we have a firm plan in place first. And for that's one of the reasons why I'm against taking action for doing this.
You want to vote against the tree ordinance? You're against the tree ordinance? Is that it?
It's just a question. Is this for a public hearing, or is this question and answer? I was under the impression that a public hearing I'm allowed to speak.
I also asked you to stay on point.
I am staying on point. I've just said to you that I'm against
I got
doing
it.
these
Got it,
regulations.
okay.
We understand.
We understand.
I understand.
Okay.
He's opposed to any of these
I'm opposed-
ordinance until we adopt the comprehensive land use plan as a plan at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
I'm sorry, that is not my position.
I'm sorry. Then please
Okay.
repeat it so I can write it down.
Best practices would be to have professional, wrong sentence here, there we go. Best practices dictate growing areas, have a firm plan that is voted into law. That doesn't mean the comprehensive land use plan. It means a plan. And the way this works is you have a plan, you work off of the plan. Then, if someone says, oh, on this property over here, I would like to do D, but A, B, and C are allowed. And what should be done is, you hold the public, okay, fill out an application, you want to put, I don't know, a tire store, sorry, it's what comes to mind. You want to put a tire store in this spot. Well, this is zoned for this type of activity. So they would come before you and say, this is what we're thinking of doing. And from there, there's a 3-part process. And I've sat at the table where you are and done this. The laws are not that different. The procedures are, but there's certain ways to go about this. And
Your time's up on this one.
well, sir, you've interrupted me like 5 times. You never
I've
even
asked
let
you
me
to
talk.
stay on point,
I
and you're
just
still
wanted-
not on
I
point.
just wanted what you said. I heard you said best practices dictate we have a firm plan voted into law.
Well, my time's up, so I'll go sit down.
Thank you. Okay. Next will be discussion. Alderman Meyer.
Pass.
Okay. Alderman Pinchot.
Pass.
Alderman Burnett.
No further questions.
Vice Mayor Povlin.
I have none.
I have none as well. We've had sufficient discussion on this, and I'll ask the town recorder to take a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Alderman,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show that Ordinance 22-02 has been approved as presented on the second reading. Okay, next will be Ordinance 22-03, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Code, Appendix A, Zoning, Chapter 3, Section 12, General Commercial, C1, Subsection F, 9, Height Regulations, to provide for a concept plan to review when the building more than 2 stories in height is proposed. Town of Farragut applicant.
Yes, this ordinance would basically, in the mixed-use town center portion of C1, there's an opportunity to have buildings up to 4 stories in height. So all this ordinance would basically do is require a concept plan when someone is proposing a building greater than 2 stories in height so that it could be evaluated in terms of its context and what kind of uses there might be envisioned there, how it's situated in the development, and the community objectives that would be achieved with the additional taller buildings. So that's basically what's included in this ordinance, and the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 22-03 on second reading. It was unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission in February and on first reading 2 weeks ago, and there have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, questions?
Any public speaking here, Mark?
No, not on this item.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
In that case, we'll move on to discussion. Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
No further questions.
Alderman Pinchot,
Pass.
Vice Mayor Povlin. I have none as well. With discussion closed, I ask the town recorder for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Alderman Povlin,
Yes.
Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show that Ordinance 22-03 has been approved as presented on the second reading. Okay, next will be Ordinance 22-04, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, Zoning, Chapter 3, Section 13, Neighborhood Convenience, Commercial is NCC, to remove apartment buildings as a residential use and require a concept plan in association with a rezoning request to NCC. And again, Town of Farragut applicant.
Yes, this ordinance mainly does two things. It removes apartment buildings as a residential use option in the neighborhood convenience commercial district, and it also establishes the requirement for a concept plan to be submitted before a property is rezoned to NCC, similar to what we did a few months ago with the open space mixed residential, so that there's an early understanding of how the applicant intends to distribute residential and non-residential in the development, since this district does allow potentially for both. So that was kind of the logic behind this ordinance. It was unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission and was unanimously recommended for approval on first reading 2 weeks ago. There have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading, and the staff recommends approval of ordinance 22-04 on second reading.
Move to approve.
Any questions?
I do have Sean Murphy. Well, this is 4. Is that what you're talking?
3.
May I speak on this? I have one question.
Sure. I mean, I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which one you were speaking on, but I assumed it was 4, the ordinance.
This will be ordinance 22-04.
Can I make a request and you move the clock over so I can read directly from it for you? Thank you. Do you need my address again? Name and address? Okay. I have a question. Given what was just approved with Biddle Farms with apartments, has there been any legal opinion or legal discussions about potential liability that now we're making this change after what was just approved in the last year, with specifically with Biddle Farms, but it could be any other apartments?
Biddle Farm is zoned PCD.
Different
Yeah,
zoning
that's-
district, for one thing. It's planned commercial development. It's not C1.
I'm reading right here. It says to remove apartment buildings as a residential use.
In neighborhood convenience.
It's NCC, not PCD.
Again, my question is there been, and I'm asking a question, I don't know the answer to it.
Okay, understood.
Have you had any legal advice or legal opinions on whether doing this would have an impact for the future based upon the fact that you just approved the Biddle Farms project? And it doesn't have to be that, but that's the one that's in everyone's memory. Is there any legal opinion or discussion about could this change have any impact relating to that decision moving forward?
These are two completely different zoning districts, so I'm not sure that would ever be a case, but we would certainly, if we needed to get legal advice on that, and something came before us, so we could certainly do that.
Okay. Is there a potential, this is a general question about changing zoning regulations, is there any issue with the fact that one area is zoned for something and a change is done in another? Do we have issues such as 14th Amendment issues with the equal protection? Has there been any discussion in any of the meetings or, again, any legal opinions on that?
Again, we can change ordinances on various topics in any zone that we need to, that the board feels that they need to. Again, we haven't had any legal opinion that says that you couldn't do that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to discussions. Alderman Burnett?
No questions.
No questions. Okay, Alderman Pinchot?
Pass.
Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
Vice Mayor Povlin?
Pass.
I have none with sufficient discussion. I will now ask the town recorder to take a roll call vote, please.
Povlin,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot, Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show ordinance 22-04 has been approved as presented on the second reading. Okay, next will be ordinance 22-05, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 3, Section 26, planned commercial development. This is PCD, to clarify that the uses permitted in a general commercial or office zoning districts may, rather than shall, be permitted as part of a development plan submitted for rezoning request to PCD, Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah, this ordinance would amend slightly the language, some language in the PCD, to really add some further clarity to the kind of inherent flexibility that's in this district already. But basically, to the way it's worded right now, it does kind of, it states, although it refers back to some other language, but it does state that any use in commercial or office zoning districts shall be permitted. And so what this basically would do is change that word shall to may, and tie it back to the development plan, which is where, you know, the uses and the, you know, the layout and the general concept of what someone is doing in a planned commercial development project is reviewed as part of a rezoning request. So that's basically all that this does. It's a pretty simple amendment to just add a little more clarity to the flexibility in the planned commercial development district. So this also was unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission in February, and was approved on first reading 2 weeks ago, and there have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading, and the staff recommends approval of ordinance 22-05 on second reading.
Second.
Move to approve.
Okay, questions?
Two, Michael Wilson, and then Sean Murphy.
Good evening. Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street, Farragut, Tennessee. If you remember, I was here 2 weeks ago, and part of my question back then, 2 weeks ago, was about the authority that was being granted with this change. Since then, I went back and reviewed the whole PCD ordinance again and looked at that district, and I realized you already have this authority to limit the land or the uses within the planned commercial development district. In the land uses paragraph 1A, it clearly states, unless otherwise prohibited through the approved development plan, any use permitted within the general commercial or office districts shall be allowed within the PCD district. It also states right below there that it includes residential uses, as would be consistent with C1. I think it's subparagraph F for the mixed-use town center area. Under general conditions, it says by acceptance and approval of the PCD zoning, the applicant agrees to the conditions set forth in this section as part of such approval. As part of the approval of the PCD district, the town may require the following in subparagraph C under that, says limitation of specific commercial use. So I think changing the language from shall, meaning it's mandatory, to may, meaning it's permissible, I don't think that really changes the authority that you're already granted as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So that helped clear up the question for me from 2 weeks ago. I would say, to some, the use of the term may be allowed might be a little confusing. It might cause them to think that there's another level of approval that would be needed. It may be approved, but is it approved? Do we have to go back to the town and request approval? Any land lawyer would tell you may means it's permissible, but to a layman, I think that may cause a little bit of confusion. I would say it should be clear in the development plan when that's approved by the town. I think it should be very clear which of the 25 C1 uses are approved and which of the 25 C1 uses have not been approved for development in that district. Just to clarify that, I think that would help make sure people don't come back to you and say, hey, did you mean to approve this? Did you not mean to approve it? If it's 10 years down the road and it's a new landowner, you all may not be here, and Mark's going to have to do a whole lot of work researching what happened back then. I also expressed concern 2 weeks ago about the process for making those decisions relative PCD request on one piece of property to a PCD request on another piece of property. And I would really advocate that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen provide a clear process with objective standards and criteria to make those evaluations. I think that really is important across all of the decisions that you make, that when you do those things, you have clear standards and a process and clear criteria. And I just wanted to give an example, and it may not be a good example, it might be a good example, who knows. So if you approve a traffic study for a proposed, or if you look at a traffic study in a proposed development, and that development would cause one or more intersections or roads to receive a failing grade, this could be the standard and the criteria. That request should not be approved until the appropriate mitigation plan is submitted and funded to raise the intersections or roads back to above failing. This would help minimize the traffic impacts of that development. Without established objective standards and criteria, decisions tend to be made based on individual desires and may be hard to defend if legally challenged. So I would really advocate, particularly in this case where we're going to purposefully say on this piece of property, PCD, we don't want to build a tire garage. You know, we don't want another tire store. This piece of property, it doesn't really fit there. But over on this PCD property, oh gosh, we think that would be a great place for another tire store. You know, those two people looking at those two decisions, with a little bit of time in between them, the person who was denied may really question, why did you deny me and not deny them? If you have objective standards and criteria, you can say, these are the things we looked at, the neighborhood around it. Your tire store was in the middle, or the one I used with my wife was, a place that fixed semi-rigs. You don't want that in the middle of the PCD, in the middle of a town, because you don't want to have to try to drive big trucks down little roads. But if that was over on Watt Road and the access was off of Watt Road, that may be more feasible in a PCD development over there. So I would just hope that you would maybe give that to the FMPC to look for clear standards and criteria by which to judge those. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was good.
Some good points, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, next is who?
Oh, Sean Murphy.
Sean Murphy. Okay.
I have a question. Has there been any discussions about what might go in this location, either at a workshop, a meeting, at maybe your Farragut Business Alliance meetings, private conversations? I'm looking to kind of understand the motivation to do this, make this change.
I'll answer that in my statement. Do you have anything else?
Okay, that'd be fine. Yes, I do. I want to thank Mr. Wilson's comments. He did a really good job of articulating some of the questions and concerns I had. And just to add, in addition to that, one of the concerns I have is a perception of picking winners and losers. And it goes, when I was attempting earlier to make a discussion point about why we want to have a plan we work off of first. You start with the plan, you put a set of standards in to approve people. I have 3 standards, though they're not exclusive, but kind of good general ideas. Can the property handle it? Will it disrupt the neighbors? And will it disrupt the general area? There was a discussion previously about whether or not the Baptist Church could have lights on their ball fields.
Yeah, we
That's
read
an example.
that. We've been there, okay?
Well, I haven't been there, so
Well, I know.
I'm making
You could have come to another meeting. You could do stuff like that. You step up here and you bring things up that's off
I'd like you to
point.
please stop the clock, since you last time you stopped the clock when you were talking, and Mr. Meyer got 8 minutes at the Planning Commission, and I've been cut off now like 8 times tonight. So I'd request that you please stop the clock if you're going to talk.
Are you going to be on point?
I am. I'm making an analogy of why it's important to have a plan in place first and follow a set of standards.
Are you aware of our plans? Have you ever been to a meeting to hear what we do?
Sir, you're being disrespectful to me.
No,
You're
I'm not.
talking
I'm
down
asking
to
you a
me.
question.
Sir, you are being disrespectful, and you are talking down to me like I am inferior to you, and you're insulting me. I have a right as the member of the public to ask questions and to present my concerns. And what you're doing is dressing me down, treating me like I'm stupid. You and Ms. Povlin have done this, and you keep banging me out of order. I asked you to be respectful to me. I've never been disrespectful to you.
You haven't?
Nope. I have talked to you once. Anyways, sir, we're off point. I'd like to continue my points, which you've now taken a minute of my time.
Okay, can you make points but stop asking questions, please? Just make your points.
Make your point, please. That's what we're here for.
I'll tell you what, I would like to object on the record of my treatment. I don't believe you're actually interested in hearing from me about my concerns or questions.
I'm taking notes.
I'm all set. I think you folks have made the point clear tonight. You don't want to listen to me, so I don't really want to waste anyone else's time. Thank you very much.
That's your choice, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else?
No.
Okay. Then we will move on to discussion, and we'll start with Vice Mayor Povlin.
Okay. I'm going to try to address some of Mr. Wilson's points, and hopefully they address some of Mr. Murphy's concerns as well. The Planned Commercial Development District is not a use-by-right zoning district. A development plan is required to apply for PCD, and the development plan is what the MPC recommends for approval and what the Board of Mayor and Aldermen votes on when approving a rezoning to PCD. When an applicant requests for rezoning to PCD is approved, he is tied to the approved development plan. The developer does not have a right to deviate from the approved development plan other than through very specific mechanisms laid out in the PCD zoning ordinance. The PCD zoning district provides flexibility that is usually not available in a traditional Euclidean-based zoning district like general commercial or office to develop a piece of property. The Planned Commercial Development District was established to encourage creative and resourceful projects for interrelated commercial, office, and residential uses by a development plan. The PCD has several objectives: to provide a functional common open space to be actively used, to provide a sense of place which allows the design of commercial, office, and residential developments that are architecturally and environmentally innovative, to protect natural resources, to provide for efficient, innovative land use practices, to provide for context-appropriate pedestrian and vehicular connectivity, and to maintain compatibility with nearby development and consistency with the Farragut Comprehensive Land Use Plan and all other adopted plans and ordinances of the town of Farragut. The proposed amendment to change the verbiage from shall to may in the land use section of this zoning ordinance simply clarifies that the goals of the development plan are the focus of this zoning district, and it makes it consistent with existing language that is in the that Mr. Wilson has pointed out in general conditions. It just makes it all consistent that what is driving this is the development plan, not necessarily the uses. To Mr. Wilson's points, talks about how one development something might be acceptable in one development and it's not in another. Context matters. It always matters. The surrounding built environment or the surrounding environment matters in planning, and it's not. We look for that. You're looking for consistency, which is what most of our regular zonings have, C1, R1. If you meet the standards of the height, the setbacks, the density, the overall lot coverage, you have a right by use to use that, to develop in that, especially if you've already zoned it. PCD is a different type of development. It is, you don't just get PCD and then do what you want. It is, you purposefully have to go and pursue it, and the development plan is what we're approving. One of the goals here is to maintain compatibility with nearby development and consistency. So they're talking about how this fits into a particular location. One particular location is different than another particular location. For instance, the Biddle Farm it's surrounded by it has the stream on one side, a layer of land, then Concord Road. It's got the arterial. You go back at the Ford property, and on either side is low-density residential. You can't ignore that. That is part of when you're looking at any rezoning effort, you have to consider the context. The development shall be designed in a manner that ensures compatibility with adjacent land uses. And Mr. Wilson well knows our transition policy, which he used very effectively during the Smith Road apartment discussion. I will say, and also, when a municipal planning commission makes a decision, They are required to make findings of facts, statements of material evidence, and reasons for its actions as part of each motion or action of the Municipal Planning Commission. We are required, when we are making a decision, to explain why we're making that decision on the record. That has to be part of the decision, particularly if we're saying no. There has to be, it's the same with variances. We have to give the reason why we're providing variance, because it's so important to be consistent. And if you're providing a variance, you have to make sure that you're providing the support for it. So those were, I think that answered your questions. I don't know if it fully addressed what Mr. Murphy his concerns were, but I tried. So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next will be Alderman Burnett,
No questions.
Alderman Meyer.
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot.
I want to make one comment. Basically, what Mr. Murphy and Mr. Wilson said about well, in the case of apartments, we've done workshops on Watt Road. We've done workshops on McPhee Road. We've done workshops on Merchants Road. We've been doing it just the last 2 days. We had workshops on the other two. We're trying to get feedback from our citizens, and that's what's, I think, really guiding us lately, is what do the citizens want in each of these areas, these corridors, or this property that's still undeveloped. And we're trying very hard to listen and to do the best we can to develop this remaining property according to what they want. So for what it's worth, we're working hard trying to do that. That's all I've got to say.
I have one thing. The Vice Mayor mentioned earlier on our charter, if you look under TCA 61-102, the word shall is explained as mandatory and the word may is permissive. That's right there in our charter. I think if anybody looks at that, they'll see that. Okay, we pretty well discussed this. Is there anyone else that has anything? Okay. Then I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Burnett. Yes. Alderman Meyer.
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot.
Yes.
Alderman Povlin.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show Ordinance 22-05 has been approved as presented on the second reading. Okay, next, the business items. We have on tonight's agenda, we have two. Approval of child care business use splash pad at McPhee Park.
And I am Sue Stool. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. As you all know, our splash pad is well loved. So well loved that it has been difficult to make everyone happy at times. All of our users are happy at times. So in the past few years, we've had a problem with the child care businesses having the splash pad in McPhee Playground as a spot for their field trips. And we understand why. It's beautiful. It's great. It's awesome. It tends to cause problems with our community because it literally gets overrun with kids, and so families have a hard time being able to use it. It gets so crowded that you can't hardly move. Some of the problems that we've had is that, they tend to sort of take over the pavilions even if they're rented, and sometimes the restrooms are an issue where kids are changing, their kids are changing and the entrances are blocked, which you really can't do for everyone who wants to use those restrooms, things like that. So we have tried as staff on staff level, and we've talked to Parks and Athletics Council to institute some policies to make this easier, including asking them to call to register, asking them to rent a pavilion, and even asking them to only use it during certain times. And we haven't been successful. And last year it reached a fever pitch. So we thought we would love for the board to give us the full weight of your power behind a policy. And so we took this to the Parks and Athletics Council, and they were unanimous in their approval. And what we are asking is that any child care business would rent a pavilion in the pavilions for a half day or $85 or $95. That gives them a home base, somewhere they can put all their stuff. They can use it for their lunch and all the things that they need to do. We don't have a lot of grass space up there. There's not a lot of open room at all. So this would help with that. That they could use it from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., which is when that pavilion rental is good. The splash pad opens at 10. Playground's open before, so they could come in and be on the playground. Or play games in the pavilions. They've done lots of things. Some of them come and do arts and crafts in there, whatever. And that they do it on Monday and Wednesdays only. And that they park in the lower parking lot so their buses don't jam up the upper lot. As you well know, that gets pretty full pretty fast. And that they make sure that they have their kids change clothes at their place of business before they come, put it on under their clothes, their bathing suits under their clothes, so that all they have to do is take the clothes off. And then same thing, vice versa, go home, put their, dry off a little bit, put your clothes back on, and change back there. That way, we understand that they need to protect their kids, but literally sometimes it's them blocking the restroom entrance for 45 minutes, and that just doesn't work for the general public. So anyhow, all those things would be part of this policy. We feel like that's a good balance. We would let the community know that this is, if you approve, this is what we're going to do. So families could plan. If they didn't want to battle the crowds, they would come on the other days, Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Fridays and the weekends. But it still gives these child care businesses some place to go for their field trips. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I have a question. Sorry. Do we need to make motions or anything like that?
Yes, I would think so.
Yeah.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Sounds like you've got a question, so go right ahead.
Enforcement. How are we going to enforce this?
Just like we enforce a lot of things that's a difficult. David and I had that conversation this morning. It's like enforcing no smoking in the parks. It's a difficult thing. In the past, we have asked them. If you approve this, we will send out letters to all the people that we know use it, because we have a regular group of people that use it. We'd also put out social media. We'll put something in the newspaper, all those kind of things about these rules. We do that every year anyway. But we would do that. We would, if someone shows up when they're not supposed to, like we did last year, we would send them an email and say, hey, this is our policy. Just want to make sure you know that, so that, the next time, because this is not, the groups that come are not usually one time in the summer. It's like a weekly thing for a lot of them, or an every other weekly thing. So, and ultimately, it's only usually a few groups ultimately that are, a problem at all. So we would escalate it from there. We would call them and try to, reason with them. What we can do beyond that, I don't know, but we felt like at least if we had an approved policy, we have a little more weight behind it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable. I think it's one of our interior residential parks, and so I think it makes a lot of sense. A couple things I would add on to which you mentioned is I would expect no less than 2 or 3 communications go out to all of them ASAP. The worst thing that you could have is 20, 30 kids jacked up about going to the splash pad and then not being able to get off the bus. So
right.
I think getting as far ahead of that as we can would serve both parties well. And then maybe have a plan of how we can redirect them. This is not the spot for you on these off days, but come down here to the Great Lawn. Come down here to Mayor Bob. You can walk the park. You can go to that playground. Just some other opportunities for folks that show up that have 3 hours to spend, and they can't just go right back where they came from. So that'd be my only adds.
Thank you, Alderman Pinchot.
I did what he just said. I agree with everything you said, so I'm all for it. I think probably the first week or so, maybe have someone out there at 9 o'clock just to kind of
Yeah.
police it.
Yeah.
But other than that, hopefully after the first week or two, they'll get the message. So.
Yeah, the good thing is now with the cameras, we get a lot of phone calls on this. So this is not just staff observing this. This is actually complaints coming from families, our families and their visitors, and there are a lot of them. So the good thing about the cameras is we can pull them up and see what's going on before we even have to head out there and maybe even make a phone call. So
Great. Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
I have nothing. I'll now ask, all in favor of approval, state so by saying yes.
Yes.
Any nays?
thank you.
None. Okay, next will be approval of the professional service agreement with Urban Engineering, Inc. for design of additional tennis courts at McPhee Park.
Good evening, Board. I'm Brandon Tupper, the Assistant Town Engineer, and I'll be addressing the next agenda item. As the Mayor introduced, this is approval of professional services agreement with Urban Engineering for the design of additional tennis courts at McPhee Park. A little background on this, McPhee Park Phase 3 was just recently completed. It included 4 tennis courts, also striped for pickleball. I know we're getting great use out of them. I was out there today, and the pickleball courts were full. And then in FY22 budget, the board also approved funding for 2 additional courts. So this is building on the success of those first 4 courts with a design for 2 additional courts. So the scope of the project will be the expansion of the tennis complex. What Urban Engineering and the proposal will be is first they'll do a topographic survey and figure out exactly how much space is left in the northeast quadrant of the McPhee Park there, just to the east of the Phase 2 expansion. The alternate 2 of McPhee Phase 3. After they collect the data, they'll come back with a few different options for us to explore as far as orientation, location, as up there on the map on the in front of you there, you can see the preliminary layout kind of shows it into the hillside and into the buffer some. So we're going to be looking at, can we scoot those courts a little bit closer towards the actual roadway, what can fit in there. And it kind of asked Urban to take a value engineering approach to get the most, what can we fit there without having to get into an expensive retaining wall or anything like that. So, so then after they evaluate it and bring a few orientations and options to us, they will proceed to design plans and then ultimately assist us with bid and construction assistance throughout the process. So the total fee is not to exceed $18,240. They'll bill it on an hourly basis. And their schedule provided with the proposal is 30 days for the first initial options of preliminary design, and then an additional 30 days for final construction drawings. With that said, I'll recommend approval of the professional services agreement with Urban Engineering for design of additional tennis courts at McPhee Park.
For approval.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we'll start off with Alderman Meyer.
Pass.
Vice Mayor Povlin.
I have nothing.
Alderman Pinchot.
I'm just very happy to see we're moving along to this point, so thank you.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to add, Mayor, is I think anybody that's driven by there has seen how quickly and tremendously the basketball usage has taken off. I don't know, I got to talk with Sue and Lauren this week, and it's getting a ton of usage. And so my ask inside of approving this, and I'll just pass a front and back picture down to you, is that we look at the next 2 tennis courts somewhat like we did the basketball court in a multi-purpose view, and look to add basketball goals inside of the tennis area. So one of the things you'll notice with basketball is, one, you rarely see full court use. And that's easy. Why that is because you come with 2 or 3 buddies, and there's 4 or 5 groups of 2 to 3 kids, and it's working itself out. They're playing half court, and they're taking some turns. But what you have is a lot of smaller groups. And so one of the ways I think we could accommodate that demand for use is adding the goals inside of the tennis courts. And you've got options, as I've sent down through there. If the tennis courts going this way, you could have goal, 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 goal across the side, or as some of the pictures show, goals on the end. You can lengthen the courts or widen the courts to accommodate more space. But my thoughts would not be we need more full court basketball courts inside that tennis space, but it's, can you provide goals, maybe a free throw line or a 3-point line, and then let those smaller groups of 2 to 3 kids have 4 more options that they could go to instead of the single option. So,
Is your intention, if you have them on the side, that you do have this circle? Because it doesn't show it here.
So I did it both ways. I did one where there's basketball markings,
Yeah.
and then I did some where there's no basketball markings.
Do they want, if someone's playing basketball, they're going to want some basketball markings, are they not?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think it could be kept minimal.
Okay.
And if you said, do you have to have markings? I'd say no, the goals, the actual basketball goals, they have to have.
Yeah.
And then it's what would be next, a free throw line and a 3-point line. So not trying to advocate for like a full court, making pickleball lines, tennis lines, and then a ton of basketball lines, but add the goals, give more space for all these little groups of people that are coming to one court, another place to go.
I'm certainly supportive of anything where we have multi-use for our courts. They're all getting heavily used for, it looks like, for everything. So multi-use is always a good thing, in my book.
Well, it looks like this particular drawing, it's got the different colored lines. You really don't ever hardly see anybody playing pickup ball, calling fouls and shooting foul shots. That's generally not part of the game. Mm-hmm. But the 3-point...
Just a lot of cussing that goes on.
Yeah, the 3-point part of it is.
It is, you're right.
I think it's something where you look at that and you say, well, we actually did the other court as a multi-purpose court. And I think that's a good thing because, again, you could have different things going on. Just you could have different groups. So, Scott?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
My only concern is, are you wanting to expand the size of the court?
So in those pictures, there are courts that are still the same size that have goals, and then there are courts where they expanded 10 foot here and 10 foot here. My request personally would be to the firm to say, bring us some options. I'm not the expert. I Googled this. You guys are the pros. Take the thoughts if the board is in agreement and come back with what options they've seen other places that work well.
My only concern is the space. We're trying to get it away from the hillside, so we don't have to build a wall, retaining wall or anything. So if we move that forward towards the road, we're going to be tight on space as it is. So would you be okay if we didn't have to expand the court size, but just put I'm okay with the goals. I'm all for that, but I just think we're going to have a problem. I don't want to go to a big expense having to put a retaining wall up to get an extra 10 feet. That's my only concern, because that could be very costly. But otherwise, I'm all for the goals.
I agree with everything, and I think the first step will be establishing what that footprint can be and what would fit in there, and and then from that we can make an informed decision of exactly how do we want to go about striping and how many courts can fit and everything. So that would be that first item of actually doing the topographic survey and understanding exactly what size of footprint we can fit in there, and then we can definitely make an informed decision about how to move forward.
Can I ask a question?
The
Step up to the...
yes.
So, I'm asking...
Name and address. Sorry.
Adam Atherton, Andover. Following up on what you said, so at Andover we just added pickleball lines to one of the tennis courts, heavily used. I'm just curious if we're considering it here.
Back up. Explain what you mean by that.
Go back to the
Yeah.
study, please.
So you could play pickleball on the tennis court.
That's what we have already
Yeah.
in McPhee Park. The pickleball, the tennis courts.
I wasn't
are
aware
already
of that. I'm asking,
Yeah.
are you considering adding pickleball lines to the tennis courts?
Well, we probably,
We already are there.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Good question.
Vote.
Okay.
We already have a motion and second.
Yeah, we do, and we've had sufficient discussion, so all in favor vote by saying yes.
yes.
Let the record show the contract with Urban Engineering has been approved. Okay, next will be yield the floor to David Smoke for his report.
I have nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
Okay, then we will move on to no town attorney, so citizens forum.
Yes, sir. Our first speaker is Mike Wilson.
Good evening again, Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street. I want to thank the town and Alderman Pinchak. You stole my thunder here a little bit. I attended the Boring Road corridor outreach last night and participated in that. I believe maybe Mayor Williams knows the exact count. We probably had about 35, I would think 35 last night. And from talking to Mark Shipley, I think we had about 40 the first night. So
Correct.
I think good turnout. Unfortunately, I wasn't here in November when they did the initial. I was able to attend the August, September when we did the high density, medium density discussion. So I wasn't able to attend in November. I was down in Florida visiting family. So I got to see what options came out of that November meeting. And just an observation, a lot of the property was is on the future land use map is medium density residential. In the areas that we looked. And I just happened to observe, and I think some other folks in the room observed that, and we talked about this a little bit last night, that some of the options that came out of the November meeting didn't make it to medium density residential density. It was, anywhere from 1 to 2 to the 3 to 6 range. The 6 is kind of that bottom end of medium density residential. So in talking with Mark last night, my observations are, once that data's kind of, gone through and the FMPC and probably the FMPC steering committee gets a chance to look at it, probably be some recommendations for changes, which is, I think, what we were looking to do. I would ask that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen please continue this outreach process as that data is gathered and what changes, please workshop those changes so we have a chance. One of the two concerns I raised last night was if we're going to change the future land use map on some of those particular parcels, I have real concerns of how do we address the transition policy. The Doug Horn property is one of them. How do we address, changing density, transitioning density from the commercial on the front end of that property along Kingston Pike back to the R3 neighborhood, Baldwin Park behind it. If that was R1, R2, which was basically kind of the choices we had, that wouldn't seem to line up with our transition policy. My other concern with kind of what was presented, and I know this is all, this information to make decisions. It's not, this is what's going to be, we have to look at all of this, but I think it warrants a broader discussion. The other issue I kind of concern I raised to Mark last night is one of our strategies in the comprehensive land use plan was to encourage greater housing choice. And Alderman Pinchak, I know you have been somebody who has on Biddle Farm, was very interested in a townhome style. That has been something this community has seen a need for and discussed, and it just hasn't happened that we've had that townhome community come in to fill that kind of medium density, lower to medium density residential need. So my concern is if all of a sudden we make all these medium density parcels back to low density, then we're kind of stuck with those housing choices. And how does that help us meet strategy 8 or meet that one of those 8 strategies of, encouraging greater housing choice? Or is that not something 10 years after the comprehensive land use plan that is important to us anymore. So I think those kinds of conversations we need to continue to have as a community. And so, again, I really appreciate the outreach effort that's been done along Boring Road at Kingston Pike. I appreciate the previous efforts. I did want to put one plug out because, Mark, at one point the question came up on the FMPC steering committee. That's kind of near and dear to my heart. When I graduated Intro to Farragut, me and Mayor Williams and I think Alderman Povlin, we were on that initial group when that started up, and I think we had probably 10 to 12 members on that steering committee, and I was really surprised to see right now we currently have 5.
No, we have more than that.
We have more, but Mark just didn't list them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's a few more.
So-
they've come and gone, and it's kind of been you.
Yeah, I had to
you
step
left,
away because of timing.
because of your job, and
I'm still on.
it's kind of.
I just wanted to put a plug out. That is a great way to understand what's going on in the town and how this process works, and get involved on the ground floor of these rezonings, planning, all of that. So I would encourage folks that were in the recent Intro to Farragut program, or if you haven't been in that program, to either volunteer to help with that committee, or even if you just want to go to some of the meetings when they're announced, please go to them because that's an excellent opportunity. So thank you again for all the outreach.
Okay,
Michael.
thank you.
I'd like to.
Our last speaker is
I'd
Sean
like to
Murphy.
make one
sorry.
comment about that. Back to the Biddle property, one of the things, Michael, that I strongly was for for people that, mainly seniors, that were wanting to move out of their homes because they didn't want to do yard work, landscaping, whatever it might be, wanted to buy into the mixed-use town center. They wanted equity. They didn't want to rent. So I told Bud Cullum, I said, if you're going to put these apartments in, you've got to limit it. No more after this initial group. If there's any extra land, I'd like to see some townhomes where people could purchase it and buy into it. So he's agreed to do that. We haven't seen the plans yet, but I really wanted to put a limit to the number of apartments going in there. I think it's way too many myself, but that's part of the deal.
I think we're done. Personally, I'm done.
I'm done too. That's what I'm saying. If anything else, like he said, we need some different type of homes,
People are
real
looking
estate.
for townhomes. They want to be.
They want 'em.
They want to live down in the a walkable
Yeah.
town center. Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm glad Bud's going to do them. I'm anxious to see the plans.
I have some points that I can follow up on with this. Mr. Wilson, as you know, that we started this process of reviewing around the end of 2017, which the plan was adopted in 2012, December of 2012. So we had lived with it for probably about 4.5 years. And because I was on the Planning Commission and that was handed to me, basically, I joined in July of 2013. So it was a fresh plan and I had to get familiar with it. And then working with Mark and working with all the stuff that we had gone through, pushed for this, we needed to review this plan. So that's what we started. In 2018, we got to look at Watt Road Corridor, and then we did McPhee, and we did Snyder Road, Outlet Drive, and then, of course, COVID hit, because that's what we're trying to work through is the rest of this. Now, this recent study, in my opinion, after seeing the November thing, we got overambitious and tried basically to do 4 study areas in one meeting, and it was overwhelming. To someone who's familiar with the plan, you could kind of work through it, but to people who aren't familiar with the plan, it was daunting, which is why we ended up doing this follow-up meeting, was because there was some confusion. I met with Cheryl Nels the next day to have her walk me through what were the issues so that we could address them. We're not done with the review of the plan. Once we work through this one, there's some issues with even currently what's designated. For instance, Baldwin Park is not designated accurately on the map. It is 2.34 units per acre when you do the whole density, which is a very low density neighborhood. It's reflected as low density, which is 3 to 6 units per acre. So across the map of the built environment, we have that issue. Park Place is designated medium density, and it's 2.96 units per acre. So that needs to be addressed. The built environment on our land use map needs to be addressed because we're making these land use decisions based on a land use plan where the built environment isn't accurately designated, and that's where you end up with this transition issue. Looking at the Bourne Road corridor, You talk about transitions, which is an important policy and something that has really worked well for us in this idea of planning. Bourne Road, you have a 100-foot buffer between the Ingalls, what is the Ingalls property, and that undeveloped property behind it. And I'm beginning to think that that might need to be reflected on our land use map. The original intention, it looked like, was for the Ingalls property to redevelop, and it didn't redevelop. They just decided to rehab the old Ingalls. And so once they rehabbed the old Ingalls and the senior living came in, that kind of took that whole plan and made it look, the medium density in between Baldwin Park and Waverly Court makes no sense whatsoever. And then when you don't have the mixed-use neighborhood on the front because they decided to just renovate the old Ingalls, that kind of changed that back to commercial. That really does need to be changed back to commercial because the buildings are too big for what we would consider neighborhood convenience commercial. So that kind of is, all of that is kind of coloring that part of that plan. I would contend to you the undeveloped property in Foxden that's shown as medium density is zoned R4. And really, the max you can get is 6 units per acre. It probably should be yellow on that. Waverly Court is something like 4.5 something or other. So it doesn't get close to the 6 units per acre. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to look for in this plan. I know that when we first adopted this plan at the land use, at the Planning Commission level in 2012, early 2013, there were residents who wanted us to have it adopted at the board level. And I look at this plan and I'm very relieved that we didn't, because I think it's got good bones. But when I look, when you start digging into it, and I'm sure that you've probably looked at the map too and think, well, why is this here? Or why was this done? Or that probably needs to be rectified. So right now, the plan isn't in a condition that I would feel comfortable adopting. I would love to get it in a condition where we get the final input that we need to these final areas of undeveloped property, and then get it to a condition where this board might consider adopting it. But it's not there yet. A plan is and even then, all that does is give an extra layer to how you change the plan, which is what Knox County does. Knox County the Knox County Commission adopts all of their sector plans. So any changes go to Knox County. So it's kind of like the mixed use town center, which has been adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in 2015. Any changes in there would go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Same thing for any changes made to the rest of the plan once you adopt it, which now it becomes a responsibility of the board to really understand the plan as well. So that's, I hope that gives you some clarity on what kind of where we're at, kind of where I'm at thinking about this plan as we move forward. COVID really put a dent in our ability to move forward. We couldn't have public meetings you see the public input. You have to be in a room together. And so it kind of shut it down. So that's, I hope that addresses some of your points.
What Mr. Wilson talked about as far as the last night meeting, that was very, very constructive. The night before, very constructive. You got to hear all sides of and all thoughts. I think really when you look at our vision plan that we put together as a group, and then you look at the comprehensive land use plan, which was brought to us with help from a consultant that does this kind of thing for a living. We knew that eventually that we would have to modify it whenever it was first put forth. We've been doing that. Staff has done a great job in bringing to us what we needed to review, and a good example was last night. I think Mark did a great job with that. Everybody that was there would probably agree. Well, most everybody. The point being is, as we look at other sections of our town that needs to be addressed, then eventually, like what the Vice Mayor said, we can put this together and adopt it. At that point, I would like to see a and David and I have talked about this, we'd like to see another consultant come in and help do the adoption process. That way, they can kind of check all the boxes, make sure we don't miss anything, because right now we're still working on it. I think a lot of people don't realize that, but we are, and I know you do because you were involved with it to begin with. But I think going forward, if we just continue to work on these areas that need to be done, I think we'll get there. As far as the housing, right now I think any type of housing that's built would sell in our town. It don't matter what it is. We're seeing houses that need everything done to them, completely revamped, that's getting probably twice of what they would normally bring on the market, because a lot of people are buying houses unseen. They're actually buying them from other states and moving in and then paying cash for them. And so anything that we put in, I think would probably sell. But what you're talking about, what Ron's talking about, there is a need for. I think the developers are starting to see that. They look at what the land will do, what the land use has for it, and what the zoning is. And hopefully in the future we'll see some of these townhome developments, because that's I think something that would be real popular. I know it would be with some of the aging population. That's all I have. Let's see, Alderman Burnett, you're next.
Well, this is only public forum, so.
True. Mr. Wilson wanted to be addressed.
Okay.
Yep, no further comments to Mr. Wilson.
Alderman Meyer.
No comments.
Okay. Okay, next speaker, please. Sean Murphy.
First question for you. In letting Mr. Atherton speak, is that part of normal business, that if you have an issue in front of you, the public's allowed to speak at that time?
This was something that he asked to speak, and the town recorder had quick questions to the town recorder, and we allow it, yeah.
So it's normal procedure to allow that if you're discussing an item on the agenda?
It was about an item that we were discussing.
Yeah, it was actually not a ordinance item.
Okay.
It was a business item.
Okay.
They're a little bit different.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, if you have a business item up, that if the public has questions specifically about that they're allowed to ask that question?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I would like to go back to a question Mr. Williams deferred for later in the meeting earlier. I asked about whether or not the rules of public comment for the public also apply to the Board of Aldermen. Board Mayor and Aldermen, all of you folks.
Let him ask his questions, let him finish.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he can sit down and...
Thank you. So my first question is that do the rules that the people like myself have to live under, do you folks also have to follow those rules? Specifically, item number 8, personal attacks and malicious comments shall not be tolerated. That is a question. I appreciate you answering it. The next question I'd like to ask is, does the town have enforcement, employees who do enforcement where they go to private residences and tell the residents they're only allowed to have 2 candidate yard signs out on their front yard? The other thing is, I would just like to leave as a comment that I show up to one meeting 2 weeks ago. I haven't I've watched meetings. I haven't had the time to attend. A week later, my personal private business is blasted all over Facebook by a member of this board. And then tonight, 2 of you bring up where I'm from, actually called the town that I haven't lived in 5 years, discussing a position I haven't held in 9. And I'm just wondering if you folks have checked with the town attorney about whether or not that's ethical under Tennessee law. I'm a private citizen. I was a private citizen 2 weeks ago. I'm still a private citizen today. I expect to be treated in New Jersey and New York and the Northeast the way I was treated tonight. Honestly, I'm personally offended. I feel I wasn't treated with respect. I was gavelled down, not allowed to talk, interrupted, and then singled out I did write a letter to the Farragut Press. Those are my opinions, and amazing how you folks are spending time reacting to it here, including my comments from the last meeting. I'd like to invoke a rule in East Tennessee that I've learned. If you'd like, you can give me a call. My phone number's out there. Mr. Williams, I spoke to you. I don't even know if you remember what we did. When I first moved here, you were gracious enough to give me an hour and a half of your time. And I appreciated that, and I thought most of what you said was pretty reasonable. I haven't spoken to any of the other you in person, but I thought we had that rule in Tennessee. So I would appreciate if you could answer the questions, and thank you for my few minutes of time.
Whoa, don't sit down.
Yeah, well, no, I don't, you need to sit down. No, we don't need to converse. I don't need to converse.
No, I want to, I'd like for him to stand there so he can hear us, unless you want to sit down.
I would like to sit down just because it's been a long day. And
go right ahead.
I'll sit down.
Want me first?
Yeah, you
Okay. First off, I started out tonight with an education because the letter that was written, it was personal to me. It was written, apparently, you can attack me, call me out, and take me out of context, but I'm not allowed to respond because I might be called a bully or being disrespectful. So I'm going to unpack this point by point. The first statement that was stated in the letter is, it's highly unusual for a town to propose major zoning changes without someone filling out an application. This is wholly inaccurate and demonstrably false. And I had to clarify that. This is a way it is done. This is how zoning ordinances are amended in Tennessee, in municipalities in Tennessee. Calling up Alcoa, and I called up Maryville to have assurances that they handle it the same way we do. And most of the zoning changes, most of the text amendments that are made to zoning ordinances are town initiated, staff initiated. They get together, they talk about whatever the text amendment needs to be, they present it to the Planning Commission, and then it goes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That is how it's done. That is how it's always been done. And this statement here makes it sound like we're doing something out of character, which is not the truth, and it needed to be called out. I was taken completely out of context. On what road do we really want another tire store? This was with regard to the planned commercial development, which if you read the planned commercial development zoning ordinance, it specifically talks about auto-oriented and how to try to wrangle it and not have it, and that's talking about gas stations. No, we don't need a tire store in PCD. No, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen does not need to get into the private market. If property is zoned C1 and they want to put a tire store in, all the more power to them. They've done their market research. They think that they're going to have a successful business there no matter what it is. They have a right, use by right. If they're zone C1, it's allowed. They follow all of our ordinances, go for it. But a planned commercial development is a different type of development. We are looking for something that is community-oriented. We're looking for something that is walkable, pedestrian-oriented, something that's unique. And we want to be able to kind of have a little more say over what goes in there. I would say this, I can unpack some other stuff. The government has two main responsibilities in land use. First, creating and following a comprehensive land use plan, which we have, and it's been professionally done. Our first plan was from 2001 to 2011. That's our first transportation land use policy. Now, this was they did this. That Board of Mayor and Aldermen put that together with the local planning assistance office of the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. I suspect we didn't have 3 pennies to rub together in 2001 to spend to put a plan like this together. So that's why we worked through this, because that's what we could afford to do in 2001 or 2000. So when that plan, it came overdue in 2011, at the end of 2011, we passed a, Jared.
Uh-oh. Take your son's.
You say what you need to say. I've got to go talk to my son. He's in South Korea in the Army, and I talk to him like every 3 weeks. So.
Okay. start off with something that I always mention is that the mayor and vice mayor shall maintain control of the meeting to provide a professional, objective environment, and that we have a comment protocol. And one of the things that I ask that when you step up, we really don't need a life history of what we just need for you to comment on that particular item. Now, when you go to Citizens Forum, you can pretty well talk about whatever you want to, but when it is an agenda item, as far as an ordinance, then we'd like to stay on protocol, or stay on point with that's the protocol. And at that point, if you can do that, then there's not an issue. When you don't, then that's when we have to try to maintain control of the meeting. We're basically here, number one, to do town business, and that's primarily what we're here for. And a lot of times, as Mr. Wilson would know, he has a lot of comment that goes into what we do and have done for a number of years. It's very constructive, and it's not designed for anything else but being constructive, and that's kind of what we're about here. So to say that I signaled you out, no, I've not signaled you out. If you do not stay on point, then we're here to stay on point so we can move on. Enforcement of yard signs. We do have a person that does those kind of things. I think the law says one sign per candidate. David, can you expand on that?
Mayor, I was trying to find that exact wording. I don't have it in front of me. I'm still looking for it. But there is in our sign ordinance, yes, sir.
Those are the exclusion. Those are part of the exclusions. They're not in the body of it. There's an exclusion for. I was just looking at it the other day. I've had 3 or 4 signs of individual candidates in my yard. I don't think we try to regulate that.
Our main thing is we try to make sure that any sign that's in the right-of-way is out of the right-of-way, or if it's in a view of a car that needs to go around a corner or something like that, and it's taking up, you can't see clearly. Those are the things we really try to regulate.
I think Tennessee law addresses the single sign.
They do have I was trying to find that in Tennessee law. There is a Tennessee law about political signs.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's something pretty recent that, I mean, it's easily looked up. I don't have that handy.
Mayor, may I give it to you? I did have a minute left to speak.
We can look it up.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
If you have an issue with how it's written, that particular part, that you need to email one of us and we'll figure out because that sign ordinance, we had to adopt a new sign. Obviously, you know that we had to adopt a new sign ordinance, and we're all wrestling through how you do, yes, that was a painful process. We're all wrestling through how you do a non-content-based sign ordinance, and I suspect most municipalities and local governments are. So, is that all you had? Because I can continue. So, I'll finish up with the land use plan. So we adopted the land use plan in December of 2012. We went through an entire planning process, basically the whole year of 2012, gathering community input and putting it all together and finally adopting it. And it was quite an intensive process, I understand. I was not involved in the development of the land use plan. I started in July of 2013, and this was handed to me. And it was overwhelmingly daunting to read it and understand it and digest it and then apply it. And one of the policies is in 5 years we need to review and possibly update, which is what we're in the middle of doing. So we've used the plan. The plan has been effective. It's very helpful. It's not perfect, but it is a professionally done plan that we've been working through and trying to update with citizen input, which I think for the most part has been pretty successful. I called up your hometown because you refer to it. I have served on my local zoning commission in my former hometown, so you called out your former hometown. I know that you served in Woodbury. So I wanted to know, okay, how do they handle things in Woodbury? If you're saying this is highly unusual for a town to do this, how do they do it in Woodbury? And I spoke to the gentleman, and I explained how we work, and he says, yeah, we don't do it like that. Okay, that's great. It works differently in Connecticut. They do it a little differently than we do. But just because we do it different doesn't mean that we're doing something wrong. And that I found that disturbing, because a lot of people in our town, well, a lot of people, period, don't understand how local government works because you don't learn it in high school. It is, you come here and you think, what's going on? The first time I came here, I didn't know what was going on. I was at a planning commission meeting telling them fix this road, not that road, and didn't know where they were in the process. It's hard. And so when someone writes that and proposes that we're doing something wrong, when this is what we do, I have to correct that record. We need people involved in our town. We are a community of residents. We were founded by a community of people who wanted to be separate from Knox County for very specific reasons. If we lose who we are, which is residents running this, we're going to go right back to being something that we were founded not to be. We are run by residents who care about our community. We might see things differently, but I'm working through the plans that were provided. This is, if it needs to be different, if we're finding out, okay, well, that needs to change, we do it. We're doing it through community input. But I'm so tired of people attacking me for following a land use plan that was adopted in 2012. 45-minute waits to pick up your school children. If we widen Kingston Pike to 4 lanes on each side, you'd still be waiting 45 minutes because the problem isn't our capacity of roads. It's the fact that when you get on campus, everybody has to get down to 1 lane, and there's inefficiencies on campus when 3,500 kids, parents, administrators, and teachers all show up to be at one place at one time, and you only have 3 access points. There's a problem. You know this. There's some need for some efficiencies on campus, because once you get on campus, it's a slog. And we were looking at, can we put another entrance point in? Can you put a loop around the back of the high school that maybe connects that and provides another stacking area so that people stop stopping on the circle? There may be solutions there, but everything's an investment. And of course, we know how much money Knox County gives to the Farragut schools. So you mentioned something about the First Baptist Church. They are property owners. They have the right to apply for these light poles, and they have due process to a process that everybody else goes through: workshop, planning commission recommendation, and first and second readings. They workshopped, and then we found some more extra material information that needed to be considered by them and the residents. They have not come back for more discussion. The ball is in their court. They are the applicant. We are required, whether we agree with what they want to do or not, we are required to allow them to go through the process. That doesn't mean they get their way. So right now, they're in a holding pattern. They have not come back to us. This is their process to complete, not ours. We can't just take it off because we're not fans of a particular request. They have a right to ask for a recommendation, and we have a right to say yay or nay. That's where that is. They have not finished their process. The town is often the applicant for changes, because we are often the applicant for changes, just like every other town around us. We apply to amend our ordinances, to update them. Sometimes they're Supreme Court rulings, sometimes they're state rulings that every session they come up with ways to preempt the local governments. Recently and I'll give you the great example, 2017, we passed a telecommunications ordinance aligned with federal law, federal cases, that protected our community the best we could based on what we were allowed to do legally. And then in 2018, the state legislature passed a telecommunications law that completely preempted our ordinance. And we were beholden to them because they have that right to do that. So the only thing we could do was adopt a aesthetic plan, which is what we did. I don't know how much that's going to protect us, but that's where we are. The state has a lot more power over us than people seem to realize. So it shouldn't, but it does. We're a creation of the state, and it is what it is. So I have a right to come back and explain things. I don't need people to agree with me. I really don't. I can get pretty opinionated on things. But I'm not so stuck in my position that I won't listen to other people. But I don't need to be threatened or insulted or take my words taken out of context. I'm sure I will find something on some next door post next week about something I said tonight. Because that seems to be the modus operandi of some people. Let's just take it out of context and then beat the crowd out of her. So I'm going to correct the record when I need to. And I'll take the hits. I'm term limited. No one is more happy about that than I am. So I'm done. I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. I guess that pretty well covers our tonight's meeting. We'll go with you got something?
Hey, something unrelated.
Okay.
Oh, for gosh
Something
sake.
much lighter, Mayor. I wanted, before you swung the gavel the last time, offer one point of clarity to my my thoughts earlier in the workshop. So I was advocating for the lights this year with this around the $60K, and when it brought up the lights on the new 2 tennis courts that we've already voted on, what I kind of said was, yeah, if we can do them both together, then sure, but clearly that's not going to be the case because we're doing the study right now, and that's 12 months off. It's 12 months of increased prices, so on and so forth. So just to make sure it was clear, because somebody mentioned to me it wasn't clear, I was advocating for it to go now.
With this, before, not even for this budget, for in our the current fiscal year we're in.
Correct.
And to clarify, I agree with you.
Okay.
I think the lighting is very important. There'll be kids there at night. The lights are important.
Okay.
We need to do it.
Thank you.
Are you saying that you want to get the lights for the tennis courts with the basketball courts?
No.
They're
No,
separate.
he wants.
I was saying if they could both go together now, but
They can't.
I've got a
was where I
question
was
for Brandon. Brandon?
Let him come on down.
I'd like to go the cheaper route too, but I think safety's more important at this juncture than.
Well, and who knows
And
how
that's
long
not
it's going to
strong.
take to order.
Yeah, I
them
mean,
and get
Well,
it
here's the
in.
thing.
It needs to happen.
If we get the
Maybe
design,
next fiscal year.
if we get the design done in the next 60 days, and then we put it out for bid, when could construction begin?
I'd say a reasonable time frame would be 30 days for bid and then probably another 30 days for notice to proceed. One point to kind of clarify too, with this design, we're not specifically designing lights for this basketball or for the additional tennis courts at this time. This is just the base tennis court layout, footprint, and everything.
So it don't matter anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
my thought is, could we put the design for the lights in with this? Was that going to change everything?
It will not change anything. We, as part of the Phase 3, we stubbed the conduits out for these future lights, and actually we've been working with Sue to look at directly procuring the lights and doing it as its own contract for just installation of lights.
Well, my question is, could we start on the courts in August?
That's a reasonable time
Could we
frame.
complete them by September or October?
That's pretty aggressive for a construction schedule, I would think.
That's what I'm asking.
David's like, what? He said, what?
Have you seen any projects that we've been able to complete in that time frame, Mr. Pinchuk?
I just thought if, in fact, it could be done by fall,
That's
then could we, because the economy,
My first
you know,
thought, just yell and make it happen.
just try to do them together if you thought the courts would be ready by then. That's all I was asking.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're done. Josh, Jared's going to call me back. So.
Okay, then we are at 7:50 the time. p.m. Without objection, the March 24, 2022 Farragut Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
You okay?